All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. From wherever you are. Oh, yeah, baby. The world is turning. We got a great show for you today. You can see the assembled mass. Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
And Kim is coming off a show that she does before this. Kim's kind of the most popular kid in school, you know.
Yeah.
And then she's doing a show after this. So she's got she's just really squeezing us in between shows.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah, very, very cool.
I can make time for you, Mark Thompson. I will.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, I am glad that we have you along. Tony's here today, everybody. Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Tony has hustled some breaking news stuff for us. Thank you, Tony, for that. And we'll get to that. Also, David Katz today. On Thursdays, we talk to the former federal prosecutor who has been spot on in terms of all of the legal prognostication that's gone with all of these various cases against Trump, against Proud Boys, again, you know. So prognostication is a ding word. But it's great to have you here. Smash the like button.
Smash it with your iron rod.
And let's get going. Yes. Had a personal story for you. I don't even remember what it is now. I've been scrambling with this Proud Boys news. It'll come to me, and I'll share it a little bit later.
Proud Boys. Guys convicted of seditious conspiracy.
Yeah, seditious is a ding word.
Doesn't that like
The Mark Thompson Show.
What's that?
hallmark for being a traitor? Isn't that like,
I don't know.
crimes against America? You know, didn't they used to take you out back behind the White House and push at the firing squad?
Well, you're very tough, Kim. You're
saying.
you're very tough. You're the
I'm not advocating for that now.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, chit chit chit. Time for the firing squad. Chit chit chit. Okay. We don't do that anymore, Kim.
No, we don't.
Right now, I mean, it's being talked about that if certain administrations take power, you know, it's not unprecedented in the modern age at all. I mean, in fact, you could argue that there is executions going on as part of the conflict in Ukraine. I mean, that's a different thing. There are executions, you could argue that on the continent of Africa, where there's just been a major coup. I hadn't planned on talking about this, military coup. But, Kim, we don't do that in this country. Okay, so let's I mean, you're really very tough, Kim.
But yeah, I'm not advocating for execution. I'm just saying we used to do that before when we were barbaric and bloodthirsty. Yes,
right.
Back in the barbarism days. But now, now we're not. But I just feel like life in prison wouldn't have been too much to ask for someone who committed seditious conspiracy against the United States. And instead, this fellow gets 17 years in jail?
Well, seditious conspiracy is in the eyes of the beholder, Kim. So
I guess so.
Yeah.
I'm outraged.
Yeah. Maybe Hunter Biden will be sent away for life. Maybe that's what they will do.
Maybe that's it.
All right. So
Lord.
You're really getting ahead. Can we not have a little order around here? I mean,
Who's producing this thing?
How do we get off
no
on
idea what they're doing.
executions and seditious conspiracy? And Kim all of a sudden takes over. This is the problem. She's on this show before us, okay? And on the show before us, she's super chatty, okay? I watched the show. It's like they're both super chatty, all right?
Yeah.
And it's great. Yeah. But on this show, I'm the super chatty one, okay?
Oh,
you get it?
My bad. I'm sorry.
I'm the one.
Do you know who I am?
I'm a big deal. Right.
I apologize to the Mark Thompson community.
I'm saying I like the band, but let's not forget who the lead singer of the band is, okay? Thank you.
Everyone gets their solo midway in the show, not the beginning,
exactly.
Right?
Midway.
Why are you yelling?
That's exactly it, Tony. Midway.
Why are you yelling?
All right.
Thanks, Tony.
So we will get to the sentencing and apparently and the disappointment as reflected by Kim's remarks. Let me see this. I have to put my credibility glasses on to see this.
Don't worry about it. I already got to the sentencing. You're good.
Luz Espinosa with a quick 10. Come on. Super sticker, super chats are live. They're also available in replay. We are streaming you on our giant TV while we paint the interior of our home.
Oh.
Thanks for keeping us entertained, Mark. Oh, the big shout out to Luz.
Big shout out.
And I will tell you that paint fumes do enhance the experience of the Mark Thompson Show. So if you can really get those paint fumes going, I believe you will enjoy the show at another level. Listening to you all makes my day full, says Teresa. What up, Teresa?
Big shout out.
Big shout out. That is so cool. I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And Jan Carpenter for $3.99 super sticker. Thank you, Jan. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah, I like getting things started. You know, we're crowdfunded, so it really does matter. The contributions do matter. We try to make them fun. We try to solicit them in different ways to make them fun, but truly do need crowd support. So really appreciate that. All right, now let's get into it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The breaking news of the moment is that Joe Biggs, the Florida leader of the Proud Boys, is going away. Tony has, I think, wrangled a report. Here's the news as it broke just within the last half hour or so.
Hey there, Joe Biggs has been sentenced to 17 years in federal prison. That's the second longest sentence of any January 6th defendant. It's a significant downward departure from the range that he had determined, the judge had determined in this case, which had been 27 to 33 years. Federal prosecutors had requested 33 years in federal prison for Joe Biggs, saying that he was a leader of this violent attack on the U.S. Capitol, showing images of him with a bullhorn leading the mob towards the Capitol. Joe Biggs ultimately made it onto the floor, was in the gallery of the U.S. Senate during the attack, and subsequently celebrated this, saying that January 6th was a day that would live in infamy. Joe Biggs spoke before his sentencing, asking the judge to show mercy on him, crying, talking about his daughter and his desire to still continue to play a part in his daughter's life, saying that his daughter had been molested and that he wants to be there for her, to be able to pick her up from school. But ultimately, that probably isn't in the cards for Joe Biggs, because that's 17 years in federal prison. So short of what federal prosecutors had wanted here, but still a significant amount of time behind bars, even with credit for time served, as well as good time. That's still going to leave him with more than a decade to go in federal prison. His release date would roughly be calculated somewhere in the mid-2030s. So Joe Biggs is going to be going away for a long time. That is, of course, unless Donald Trump is reelected and ultimately does what he says he is going to do, which is pardon or roll back a lot of the sentences of January 6th defendants today, Andrea.
Yeah, that's great. That's all we need. Thank you, Tony. That's really, that does essentially summarize what happened with Joe Biggs in the courtroom and also with the sentencing. And he threw everything but the kitchen sink at that judge to try to soften the sentence. You know, the kid, the abuse of the kid. I want to be there to pick her up from school. I guess she was off from school that day that he was at the Capitol, because he wasn't able to pick her up there that day. And, of course, you got to fly to Washington, so that's a couple of days you're not picking up the kids. And so it's funny how once in a while you're not picking up the kid because you're busy planning a violent overthrow of the government. Yeah. So he's the first of 4 Proud Boys, and these are leaders of the Proud Boy movement, convicted of seditious conspiracy, as Kim was saying before. He's the first to face sentencing. There's another one out of the Philadelphia Proud Boys division, Zachary Rell. The Seattle Proud Boys leader, Ethan Nordine, and the former National Proud Boys leader, Enrique Terrio. They'll all be sentenced by middle of next week. They'll be sentencing for all of them. It's neat that they're chapters of the Proud Boys. They're kind of like Chick-fil-A's, you know? I mean, they're kind of these, what do they call those? Franchises, right? The Proud Boy franchises. There's one in Philadelphia. There's one in Seattle. There's one in Florida. Then the national leader, a 5th member of the group, Dominic Pizzola, who was acquitted of seditious conspiracy but convicted of other January 6 felonies. He'll face sentencing tomorrow. He smashed a Senate wing window of the Capitol with a stolen police riot shield, and that triggered the mob's breach of that part of the building. So it's remarkable the degree of lawlessness and how these guys are hip deep in this hate movement. But it's also worth noting that prosecutors had asked for 30 years plus. They wanted 33 years, as noted in that report. And it bothers Kim, and it bothers me, that a longer sentence wasn't applied. Now, I'm also glad in that report they note that the unthinkable could happen. I mean, this is a movement dedicated to violence in many different ways. They're a paramilitary group. And the idea somehow that you could pardon them is just a loathsome thought. But it is a thought that very much bears consideration given the fact that Donald Trump may ascend to the presidency. And then the other thing I would say is the lunacy that's coming out of the GOP, out of his party, and the party that is led by Donald Trump. That lunacy would suggest a bunch of stuff that I never thought possible. For example, the pardoning of Trump regardless, the support of Trump, even if he's convicted. That's what we learned in the debate stage. If Donald Trump is convicted of all of these charges, how many of you would still support him should he win the nomination? And the hands all went up, with the exception of 2, I believe. So you see how this party could vault someone into the presidency that would pardon this guy and the other Proud Boys. So against that backdrop, America and the justice system grinds on. Now, the other thing that happened, and this is also something of a breaking news situation, is that Clarence Thomas has now said, oh yeah, those trips that have made the news, the private trips on the GOP donor Harlan Crow's plane, I did mean to get those onto the financial disclosure form. And so let me list them for you now.
I come from regular stock.
Yeah. Disclosing today, again, this is news of the hour, that Republican mega donor Harlan Crow paid for private jet trips for Clarence Thomas to attend a speech in Texas and then a vacation at Crow's luxurious New York estate. In one instance, Thomas said he took the private transportation in May because of, quote, increased security risk following the leak of the Dobbs opinion. An overturned Roe, of course. So these are newly released financial disclosures, and they amend, essentially, prior reports to include this information that has been, quote, inadvertently omitted from past forms.
Oopsies.
Yep. Stuff happens. Kim, those forms, you've got all these forms. Yeah, and you're reading these opinions. Who's got time?
Nobody.
Well,
Yeah.
To be fair, you would have time maybe on board the private plane to fill out a couple of forms. But
I come from regular stock.
I know. It's just saying that there would be time, I guess is what I'm... No willful ethics transgressions is what Clarence Thomas said in the disclosure form.
Yeah.
And then finally, just because I've mentioned... I never did the Law and Disorder Open, did I, Tony? After all of that, I wanted a Law and Disorder Open. I didn't do it.
Well, you just went right into it, so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I blame...
I'll play the close. How about that?
Who
I'll take
can
the
I
blame
blame
again. It's me.
I don't...
I'm the problem.
Well,
It's me.
Not usually, no, but usually it's not you, though. Usually I blame the producer.
Yeah, but I started talking early today, and I kind of threw you off your game. Maybe
Yes,
a little
that's true.
bit.
That's right.
Kim, how are you?
All right. I'm going to blame Kim. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
yes.
I did it.
Tony, I blame Kim. You're off the hook.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you,
You're
Kim.
welcome.
If you're new to the show, I'll tell you this. Occasionally, there'll be a misstep in this very heavily choreographed, manicured
Very
show.
rare.
We will have a misstep. It's never because of anything that I've done. That's
Right.
what you need to know.
Yeah.
So we'll run the close. Trump is dismissive of the New York Attorney General accusing him of inflating his net worth by $2 billion. We'll talk to David Katz a little bit about that. But I think the bigger story from Donald Trump is one about what would happen should the former president gain power again. It's an interesting thing that he said. You might even consider this sort of saying the quiet part out loud. He says to Glenn Beck that he will lock up his political enemies if he is president again.
What?
In an interview this week with right-wing broadcaster Glenn Beck, Donald Trump indicated that he will lock up his political enemies. Beck said, "Do you regret not locking Clinton up? And if you're president again, will you lock people up?" Trump said, "The answer is you have no choice because they're doing it to us." Under 4 indictments, he faces 91 criminal charges related to election subversion, of course, retention of classified information, hush money payments to an adult film star. He really runs the table when you put it all together. It's quite impressive. He denies wrongdoing, claims to be the victim of political persecution. And it's always exciting to...
I mean, he's taken a page from the Mark Thompson playbook here. It's never his fault. Really?
Oh,
How about
yeah.
don't break the law and you won't be locked up or under threat of being locked up? What
Well, I
about
never
taking
saw it as him
responsibility?
taking a page from the Mark Thompson playbook. Now I see him in a whole more sympathetic light.
Right.
Wow. But that's Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on the Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
And this is noted here by Luis. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
A good thing Kim has eternal immunity by having received the rod of equity and mercy.
That's
It
right.
is true. It's not quite immunity, Luis, but she does have a lot of special energy that's going on because she has received the rod of equity and mercy. Now, I'm taking nothing away from the fact that Kim has the rod of equity and mercy. I mean, she has it, and no one can take it away, and it's good for life. But I will recall now, and I'd forgotten this, that she was borderline on it, though, for a while.
That is true.
She
It was
had
touch
to
and go.
Yes. She had to get dragged across the finish line by a lot of the audience.
Yeah, it's true.
But you make a good point that she does have it. Thank you, Luis, for that. And thank you for the super sticker for $4.99. Yeah, we're crowdfunded, so I always appreciate throwing anything in the virtual tip jar helps us. In addition to David Katz, I did want to mention, there we are. You can help keep us alive. TheMarkThompsonShow.com. Click the Patreon or PayPal links, and you can join our community and contribute. And we'll update the list of donors and everybody who's part of our PayPal community and our Patreon community. It'll be updated this weekend. I think Tony said he was going to do it. So that's going to happen.
Monday will be the new one with new music. Ah.
With new music. Ooh.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I know, I'm sorry, I'm for speaking again, but I do want to ask people to share the show and subscribe if you haven't, because we're really close to hitting another milestone, I think, right?
Oh, that's so true. Kim, thank you. Thank you. Indeed. We are, I think, less than 100 subscribers away from 13,000. So that would be very special.
So round up a couple of your people, share the show, see if they can click a subscribe and get us to that 13,000 mark. That'd be awesome.
We drop videos, we drop shorts, out. So if you, for example, if you hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a video or a short or whatever. So in addition to this show, which goes for a couple hours, the show is broken out into these videos. We'll just take highlights. And if you post them on your Facebook page, because I know a lot of you are on Facebook, that helps broaden the audience. You can say, hey, please subscribe to this show. I think they do a great job, or whatever you want to say. And we hope to get to 13,000 soon. Mm-hmm. So it's Vivian Alshawa. What up, Vivian?
Big shout out.
Big shout out, Vivian.
Big shout out.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the $10 super sticker. Very, very cool. So I wanted to mention also that Belinda will be here, and I think she'll be here, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, she'll be here an hour earlier than she's typically here, so she'll be here in the next half hour, right?
Yeah, she'll be here just after the news coming up at 11:30.
Yeah, so she will be here in hour 1. Normally she's in hour 2. Now, Belinda does a segment called It's the Planet Stupid. And I did want to touch on something before she comes on because I don't really want to mess her up with this. But I did want to get to something that was emailed to me, and I noted it the other day. And if you want to send me something, you can. And I read all the email. And we get a lot of good ideas from your emails and stories that we want to do. Tony, do you have the story? You have the video of the protesters in the desert and what happened with them. I have the. Let me just get the story going before you show the video. I just want to set it up. Climate activists blocked a road to Burning Man, and this is kind of a big deal. Because, you know, I'm very much sympathetic to environmentalists and climate activists, but, you know, I do not support that kind of disruption. I think it gets you bad blood instead of the support that you want. Yes, it raises visibility, but oftentimes your message is lost in, and that's exactly what's happened here, in this anger that's associated with this delay. I mean, the kind of heat that was that everybody was being exposed to as they sat there in their car, right, Tony? Wasn't it like it was a 100-degree plus day, I think.
I mean, it's in the middle of the desert, Burning Man, you know, and like I mean, you can kind of see just at the beginning of the video here, you could see they said it was miles long back up on the main road because they pulled a trailer on there and blocked the whole road.
So Candace sent to me this email, and I just wanted to kind of just...
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Mark, I listen every day, so not sure, maybe I missed this, but did you see the video of environmentalists blocking the road to Burning Man and the rangers running them over and pulling out their guns? A few videos out there before and after as well. Candace. So now I'd like to run the video, and then I do want to remark in greater detail. I kind of tipped the fact that I'm not a big fan of this kind of protest, but you can see the delay. And I now want you to see what they did to get rid. Now, everybody's angry, okay, including the cops. And that's what you're about to see. So go ahead, Tony, roll that if you would, please. So this Ranger pickup just blasts right through the roadblock. And there are people who have attached themselves either with handcuffs or with other kinds of bolting themselves down to this thing, this roadblock. They've attached themselves. And so when that truck came through, there was no way really to get out of the way. And now he pulls guns. He pulls a gun, and other law enforcement officers pull guns. So you've got 80,000 people who are going to Burning Man. And everybody's got trailers, RVs. They're pulling, any number of things to set up camp at Burning Man. And there is this total shutdown of the road. And this climate activism protest was, I feel, misplaced, a poor strategy. I would have strongly and vigorously suggested don't do this. If you want to sit up on the side of the road, that's fine. But do not block the road. But by the time that scene unfolded, people, as I say, had been in their cars for hours, and you had anger and frustration on the part of all of these people who are going to Burning Man, and then law enforcement, and they're charged with safely providing a route so these people can arrive at Burning Man. So, yes, I've just said I'm against that kind of protest. But I feel driving the sheriff's vehicle through the blockade before you even know that people are attached to the blockade, et cetera, that's way out of bounds, man. I'm sorry, it is. And then pulling these weapons out, these guns have live ammunition in them. This isn't theater. And I understand the sheriff is trying to, or ranger in this case, is trying to send a message. And I think the message can be sent without that kind of demonstration of force. Now, again, I don't mind you dragging all that stuff off and dragging the climate activists with it, and I don't mind you arresting them. But I do mind the kind of show of violence and the act of imminent violence, which was there when that gun was pulled. I think that situation easily could have gone even more horribly and gone sideways. So that's where I am on it. I mean, now, last thing I'll say is these are tribal rangers, aren't they, Tony? I think we were talking about it before. That's why I mentioned you, right?
What I've read is that it's on tribal land, and
that's right.
They're their own. Yeah.
The Paiute tribe owns the area surrounding the protest, and their cars honking. Members of the tribe told the activists that they were not allowed to stage their protests on tribal lands. The activists refused to move, pointing out that they were chained to the blockade. But onlookers were able to successfully move the trailer a few feet to the side so that vehicles could slowly pass. But again, people were angry. They were shouting obscenities as they passed. And then finally, you had that Paiute tribal police department arriving on the scene with sirens going, and the arrest was rough. Yeah. And they're yelling, the environmentalists, you have to kind of hear this as we're nonviolent, we have no weapons. They were yelling, we're environmentalists. But at that point, nobody cares.
No.
It was disturbing, And as I say, I'm squarely in their camp, but I felt as though that was way out of bounds, just really ill-conceived. It was a poor showing.
You can see what they did. They were not blocking the road, but people were going around the side, so they set up their chairs and stuff on the side of the road, too, to stop anyone from getting by at all. So,
yeah, really bad. Really, really bad. So I thought bad look on all sides. I'm not at all happy with the environmentalists who were the protesters there, and I'm not at all happy with the cops, the tribal cops who handled it the way they did. It just, everybody was out of bounds. So that's the way I saw that. Thanks for the note. I did want to get to it, and I appreciate getting to it today. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I've got Belinda standing by. Kim, what are we doing? Tell me, help me.
I feel like she has places to go and people to meet, so we need to get right to her.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So we have It's the Planet Stupid waiting, and then we'll do some news from Kim, David Katz, the former federal prosecutor as well, on all things legal. But right now, we like to check in on the planet on Thursdays. We do it in a segment called It's the Planet Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid is Belinda Waymouth, environmental journalist. Good morning to you.
Sorry, my avatar's disappeared, so I've just got a sort of a pulsing head there.
Wow, that's true. I didn't really notice until just now. Well, hopefully your lovely visage shall return soon. Visage is a ding word. Now, let me, you go where you want, as always, but I think you'd indicated something kind of exciting today, which is that, we tell these stories of, a desperate move to save some environmental landscape or fragile ecosystem, or looking at the Earth as a whole, or the latest graphs on how bad it is. But it can leave you in a place like, what can I do? And I know you want to touch on that today, and I really am excited by that, because I think that really is increasingly something that's a question many of us are asking.
Yes, and it's so important. And, the thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago with the group of kids in Montana who had that win with the judge, that was really big, and it was really empowering for environmental advocates. They saw that and they went, wow, look, we can make a difference. And obviously, we've been thinking about that a lot, and it turns out that a lot of us have the wrong ideas. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about, where we really can empower ourselves and where we really can make a difference. And then I wanted to get on to there's some really great innovations. So I hope we'll have a couple of minutes at the end just to touch on those because they're so fantastic. So the thing that most of us think is going to have the biggest impact on climate change is recycling. And I hate to tell you, everybody, recycling isn't going to cut it. I mean, it's great. It definitely cuts down waste, and we want less waste in the environment, and we want a circular economy. We don't, we want resources to stay in the production loop and get reused. But, your recycling isn't going to save the planet. So a lot of us think it's recycling, it's having an electric stove. Now, an electric stove is the main thing that's great about an electric stove is less indoor pollution for the people who live in the house. And they think that driving less and then installing solar panels, that those things are going to really do it. But here's the thing, we really need to be doing things on, a community level when it comes to our renewable energy. But the three other things, and I've talked about these before, and I'll just touch on them really quickly for people just to go over them one more time. So the three big things that you can do is be a vegan. Now that's hard. So if you can cut down on your meat and dairy, that is huge. They want us to not have cars. That's really difficult in America, and to fly less. And that one is a really hard one. But just know the more flights you take, the bigger your personal carbon footprint is, because even though flying and maritime transport make up only 3% of overall emissions, it's big on a personal level. But
this is what I tell Courtney. She always says, why don't we go on vacation ever? We're never on vacation. I say, well, honey, it's because of our personal carbon footprints. But what I would say is all of this exists against a backdrop of insane demand for air travel, for meat worldwide. I think we've cut down on meat consumption domestically. So these are kind of big asks, but I like that at least you put them into some kind of strategy that we could all adopt personally. You're saying we can all personally make a difference.
Yeah, we can personally make a difference. I mean, when I think about carbon footprints, I really think about, big homes and the 1%ers and the 0.1%ers or the 0.01%ers, all those private jet rides and those multiple homes. That's really amping up a carbon footprint. And I really do think that we all need to, to think about it. But talking about renewable energy, so a thing we have now, the option. So right now, 8 states have options for local communities and cities to have a thing called a CAA, a community choice aggregator. And what these are is, and what is different from having your existing, investor-owned utility, providing you with the electricity that it thinks you should have and charging you a lot if it has renewable energy. What your city or your county does is it empowers these community choice aggregators. And I'm going to talk about the one I know that supplies the city where I live. It's called Clean Power Alliance. And what they do is they go out and they buy power from the source that they select, not what Southern California Edison, who has all the infrastructure that gets the electricity to my home, wants me to have. It's what my CAA wants us to have. And the Edison is still going to provide the bills and all the service and all the safety services. But the Clean Power Alliance is providing for customers in Santa Monica, if they want it, 100% renewable sourced energy, 50% or 40%. And you can opt for what you want. Right now in Santa Monica, 96% of customers have opted for the 100% renewable energy generated.
Why would anybody opt for something less than 100%? Is it money?
It's slightly more expensive if you go for the 100%, but not that much more expensive. But it gives you the option. So if you're a family that says, no, we can't afford that, you're not being forced into it. And you can also opt out. So that's the beauty of it. And this all came out of Senate Bill 790 from 2011, which allowed this provision for community choice aggregators to operate in California. So right now, 14 million people out of the 40 million who live in California get their energy from a community choice aggregator. In the States, it's double that. It's about 27.5 million people. We've got 8 states that are using these programs, and then we've got 6 other states that are exploring the option. And these include Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. And those are states that are really being impacted by climate change, by wildfires, by these terribly high temperatures. I mean, those temperatures in Phoenix over the summer have been crazy. So there, those places, I would say, yes, get yourself a community choice aggregator and get on the renewable energy ASAP.
That is just a terrific program. I mean, this community choice aggregation is the answer, I would think. I mean, a huge answer, potentially nationwide. And it shows, frankly, the power of the collective, of the community collective.
Yes. And that's the thing that I really want our listeners to know, that, when you're feeling powerless and really dejected about, I mean, the news, the environmental news right now is bleak. But if you go to your local city council, or your community, your county, and say, look, we want to have renewable energy, and we know it's possible through these community choice aggregators. So let's get on it. And just like those kids in Montana had a win, you too can have a win. And it makes a huge difference when we're all using renewables. And as I said, last week, this shift is happening, and Biden put all this framework in place for all these incentives for us to have more solar and wind power. And there's a great story today about how much geothermal is available in the US right now. So countries like Iceland and where I come from, New Zealand, we get 20% of our electricity from geothermal. And we've done this for a long time. It's been there. And the crazy thing, this is really, really ironic here in the States. So over the decades, the drilling technology has just got more and more refined thanks to big oil and fracking. We've gotten way, way better at it. We use fiber optics, we do horizontal drilling. We have all these ways of getting into where the natural gas might be. Well, guess what? We're going to be able to use all that technology to access the incredible reservoir of geothermal power we have here. And it's enough, I always love these statistics, it's enough to power the US 5 times over. I mean, that's even more than our offshore wind that I'm always harping on about. So
that's extraordinary. Yeah. And what's the status of geothermal? Like, where are they in the development of actually exploiting geothermal for all these and substituting it for a lot of the existing energy?
Thanks to fracking, we're getting closer to being able to access more of it. And I don't have a timeline to give you right now, but let me find that out, do a little more research. And
I never thought Belinda would say the words "thanks to fracking."
I know.
Yeah, it's like, really, what?
What?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We did, by the way, we did address the climate activism. Mackay asking about, I already addressed the climate activists in the desert in Burning Man. Go back and watch it. You literally just did it 8 minutes ago, so you can go find it. I'm already on record with it, and the court has ruled on that and on this show. Let me ask you about, you mentioned something about a quiz or some questions you were going to ask or something. I don't know what the...
Oh, I think I've posted it before. I've tweeted it. I'll put it up. It's from the New York Times, and it's just an interesting one to take. And I've sort of I've blown it. I've, because I've given you guys the answers, what the 4 main things are. But it's
That's
really
good.
interesting.
Yeah.
You're going to get great scores on it, Mark. When you take that quiz and you answer it, you're quite surprised by it, because you often think, well, if I buy less consumer goods, I'm really doing a great thing for the planet. And if I recycle, and if I, eat this and eat that, and the 4 main things are the ones, I went over earlier, but it's fun to take those quizzes, because where you think you might be doing super well. And look, I'm never going to, disparage recycling, because it's important, but I have to tell you, it gives industry this incredible lever You know, when we talk about plastic straws, and then they can go, we're making these non-plastic straws, and, you know, we're doing blah, blah. And it's like, straws, that's a tiny part of our waste. I mean, yeah, of course we shouldn't be using plastic straws. We don't even need straws. Our mouths, you know, we're anatomically designed to but a drink out of a cup without a straw, as I love to demonstrate to people when they're saying, oh no, but I like a straw. And they go, look at my mouth, look at the cup. I can do it. But we get sort of
hung up on the straw thing. No, I get it, and it does work. It works on me. Like if I'm not a straw guy, but I'm just on anything where it says, you know, built sustainably using, you know, I don't know, a repurposed fill in the blank. I go, oh, great. Well, that's what I want, because I believe that we should all try to live sustainably as best we can. I mean, even if we can just cut back on some of these things. So even when you say recycling, you know, we can't recycle our way out, I think, yeah, but I'm not going to throw those plastic things away in landfill, and I'm going to do whatever I can, you know, to try to live sustainably. But I take your point, which is the power of the collective, the power of society. You know, I think that's the real message. By the way, did you see? And I was going to spare you this because it's infuriating, but I have to share it with you because I was going to share it on the show. And I may as well share it with you now, and I know you have to go, but Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, he's running for president, as you know. He has rejected the federal money that was targeted to help Florida, not only through hurricanes. So there's within the bill that, you know, where all this stuff is packed in, the infrastructure bill, there is money for alternative energy, but there's also a lot of money directed to reimburse people for refrigerators, stoves, all of these things that have to be replaced potentially for more energy efficiency or whatever. So they just had a big hurricane in Florida, and the government is there with money from this Inflation Reduction Act infrastructure thing. And Biden and the administration saying, great, Florida, we're here with, I believe the number's $350 million. And we'll send you government checks for whatever it costs for your refrigerator, your stove, all these things that you need to replace in the destruction. Maybe they're flooded, maybe they were blown away, whatever. And DeSantis is saying, no, we don't want any federal money. It's an astounding. Now, beyond that, the way it applies to you and renewable energy is that he will not allow any government reimbursement for solar, and he's even tougher on any kind of new energy-efficient strategies that would apply to homeowners in Florida who would then get total reimbursement from the government. He wants none of that money in Florida because he is denying climate change and denying the man-made aspect of climate change. He wants no federal money. Anyway, I had to mention that to you. I know I didn't mean to take too much time telling you about it, but it's just such a it's gross, frankly. I don't get it.
It's so idiotic. I mean, honestly, that's just crazy. I mean, why would you say no to free money just to take a stance that's completely based in ignorance? I'm sorry, I'm just going to call it like it is. I mean, it's really, and the thing is, he's smart enough to know better. You know,
no, it's politics. He's the same way he plays the trans community, the same way he plays the gay fight, the same way he fights African-American studies. I mean, it's all politics. I don't think, you know, and as you say, he knows what's going on, but he's playing it for politics.
Yeah, and it's so going in the wrong direction. It's so crazy. And it's awful for Floridians on so many levels. I mean, all those issues that you're talking about, and then environmentally. And that is a state that is absolutely on the front lines of this. I mean, you know, Louisiana's losing, a football field every minute, and Florida will be the same way. I mean, there they are being inundated with seawater. They're a super low-lying state. I mean, they are on the front lines. It's crazy, crazy.
Yeah. Sorry, we have to finish up. What did you add? One more thing?
Innovation, but are we out of time?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. So there are the windows that are going to be solar panels now. So
yes, you told us about that a while ago. How's that coming?
Well, you know, the technology is there and they're implementing them. They've just done a whole building in Australia where the whole facade of it is all solar paneled light, window panes, which I just think is fantastic because it really is that using every single surface available and to put solar panels on roofs and to make windows into electricity generating devices just, makes complete sense. And then there was one other one I just wanted to touch on really quickly. So in Rochester, New York, there is an absolutely enormous facility being built where they're going to be recycling lithium batteries. And they are saying by the end of this year, or what their capacity will be between 80 and 90,000 tons of lithium batteries, which, by the way, is the entire amount that Europe scrapped in 2021. So the fact that they're going to be able to, recycle that amount, and they say that 95% of what's recyclable in the lithium battery will be reintroduced back into the supply chain.
Wow.
And,
wow.
Super cool. And they're called Li-Cycle. I'll tweet them as well. So I've got a few things to tweet you, and our listeners can have a look.
And that's great. I'll retweet and we'll there it is. Thank you, Tony. Tony rallied it there. Lithium ion battery recycling. Li-Cycle. Li-CYCLE.
Yeah. So cool stuff is happening, guys. Don't despair. There is some good stuff happening out there.
No, exactly. That's the point. It's the good and the bad of it, And even if we're headed for the destruction of the earth, don't we want to slow that down? I mean, I don't go, the earth's going away. It's going to happen. Just going to have nothing we can do about it. Well, there are a lot of things we can do about it, actually. And living sustainably is really the way every other species on earth has always existed. We're the only species that fouls our own habitat. It's crazy. Anyway, love having you through, Belinda. Thank you. You can find Belinda Waymouth on social media. It's Waymouth, Belinda Waymouth, and we'll talk next Thursday. Thanks a lot. Belinda, everybody. That's it.
More.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. I am happy to answer any criticisms or comments. I see them along the way. You can also feel free to send me an email. That's themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. So, Ray Renati, what up, Ray Renati? How about a big shout out for Ray?
Big shout out.
Yeah. Super sticker. Thank you for $5. Love my super sticker and super chat, people. Here is a super chat. Debbie, thank you for another $5.
Big shout
out. But in spite of Kim's barely getting the rod of equity and mercy, we did get a new drop. Cheat. That's right.
Cheat.
Yes. No embarrassing moment on this show can't be exploited for a drop. Kim, I'm sure, doesn't like that drop, but she is a good soldier in that she knows that we've exploited it, and it's
the way it goes.
It happens, but
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
Yes, that's a new favorite also. Thank you. And we will talk to David Katz, who's coming up after the top of the hour. There's something going on in San Francisco.
What he's got going here is a situation.
There is a situation with a rich person. So let me just...
The Mark Thompson Show.
You may know the story, but I still have to do it. We haven't done it here yet. The venture capitalist's wife, who is spearheading a campaign for the environment, to save the world, to make a difference in our society, all that power, all that money. No, she wants to spearhead a campaign to shut down a pickleball court that's in her neighborhood. Now, she's got a lot of backlash because pickleball is a hugely popular sport right now. Her name is Holly Peterson. And as I say, she's married to a San Francisco venture cap dude. And there are, to be fair to her, I guess, a bunch of these pickleball players who are creating a lot of noise. Isn't that what happened? It's 12 courts. I mean, that's a lot of pickleball noise, isn't it, Kim? Right in her...
grunting, as you smack the ball, you're like, There's a lot of grunting. There's a lot of traffic. It brings out the riffraff to the nice park across the street from the mansion.
I see.
You know.
It's fantastic.
It brings out the riffraff from the nice park across from the mansion. I love that line. Holly Peterson, the wife of Hotwire.com co-founder Carl Peterson, recently started a Change.org petition to block these 12 courts in her upscale Presidio Heights area. She claims that the noise pollution, as Kim says, from the 24-hour courts, wow, they really let people play pickleball 24 hours a day.
It's odd.
All that grunting, as you say, and then all the sound of the pickleball is, it makes noise too. She says it's affecting wildlife. I believe that there probably is an effect on that, but she's mostly annoyed as a homeowner.
Wildlife at a park in the city is what, homeless?
Yeah, well, I was going to say there's not, it's not the top of the list, right? The wildlife,
Birds,
it's mostly the homeowners.
Worms. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it turns out that this woman, who is, again, Holly Peterson, wife of this venture capitalist wife, she has a mansion that's $36 million of 12,000 square foot fabulousness right there in Presidio Heights. She also has, in addition to the 8 bedrooms and that 12,000 square feet, she has a pickleball court. Yes, her own private pickleball court. Yeah.
Look at that. Isn't that a nice pickleball court right behind the mansion?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that
overlooking the living room that opens straight to the pickleball viewing.
Yeah,
Nice.
There's a reason it's $36 million. So she's... again, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge. This is a beautiful area. Kim can tell you. It's right. This is stunning. The views are stunning. I'm
not lying when I say mansion. Tony, can you flash that other picture again? Look at that. I mean, come on.
God. Yeah.
And the pickleball court. So it's okay for her to have a pickleball court, but the public pickleball court across the street, that's a no-go. No.
Yeah. It's a 106-year-old home on Jackson Street in the city. $36 million. It is on the market. Yeah. And she's trying to sell it. And she says that home values within the area are sinking because of the pickleball courts. The public is coming in, my lord. We cannot have it. I'm kind of sympathetic to, this is weird to say. Now, I don't know this lady. She sounds, but I'm kind of, 24 hours a day, pickleball, it might be a little bit much. There seems maybe there would be a compromised position. But anyway, she's trying to sell the house, and she's got her own pickleball court. So, of course, she doesn't, maybe whoever buys the house will let the public use their pickleball court. But that's just one. She's not getting many signatures, and she's getting, I think, a lot of blowback on this. By the way, she's selling her house for $36 million.
Yeah.
They bought the house in 2007. How much did they buy that house for in 2007? They're now selling it for $36 million. How much is the pickleball mansion going for back in 2007? I'll take guesses in the chat. 10 million says Mackay, 15 says Pauline, 10 million says Mackay still, 8 million says Al Anonymous. Linda says 5 million. This is 10 million says Julie. 8.5 million says Randy, very precise. In 2007, what did it go for? What did they buy it for? 17 million says Heather. 12 million says MG. 6 million says Sandy. In 2007, the pickleball couple bought the mansion for $16.65 million. That was the number we were looking for. They did put a lot of renovations into it, Kim. They really upgraded a lot of the space.
Well, they put in the pickleball court.
Well, that, I think, is among the upgrades, yes.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we wish them well. Sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a rough ride. By the way, if the pickleball thing isn't your deal, they also have a karaoke room, which is very special. And
I'm all for that.
They have in the karaoke room, because you can kind of convert the karaoke room into sort of a club, disco balls, a wet bar, and of course, then they have the upper patio, which overlooks, as Kim has noted, the private pickleball court. So congratulations to them on a beautiful home, and but apparently an unsuccessful petition. And there you have it. So, no, somebody's phone is going off, which is a sign that Kim's news is coming up. We'll get a news capsule, and then the great David Katz, Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, on the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by the lovely people at the Coachella Valley Coffee Company. Let's get right to the news. It's Dahlia, actually, is where we land. The tropical storm is causing flash floods in parts of eastern North Carolina. A storm that came ashore as a Category 3 hurricane in Florida yesterday is now a tropical storm with sustained winds of 60 miles per hour, and there is a tropical storm warning in effect in this area. Idalia will be moving away from North Carolina's coast later today. Former President Trump has pleaded not guilty to charges in his election interference case in Georgia. Today, a lawyer for Trump filed a waiver for his formal arraignment and entered the plea on his behalf. Trump and 18 co-defendants face racketeering charges for allegedly trying to overturn Georgia's 2020 presidential election. Trump surrendered to authorities last week, becoming the first former president to have his mugshot taken. Several others now charged in this case have also filed arraignment waivers and have pleaded not guilty as well. And as Mark mentioned earlier, it looks like Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is disclosing now private trips that were paid for by billionaire Harlan Crow. Financial disclosure documents released today show the Republican mega donor paid for Thomas's travel expenses on at least 3 occasions last year. Thomas has been criticized following reports about years of previously undisclosed luxury trips and gifts that he accepted from Crow. Thomas has denied any wrongdoing, says he's followed the court's reporting guidelines.
I come from regular stock.
And here we pictured him showing off the complimentary watch that he received from Harlan Crow.
He comes from regular stock, but he has a bus mansion and flies on private jets.
Well,
sure.
It's nice to have rich friends.
Right. Yeah. Gas prices are set to hit a record high this Labor Day weekend. According to CNN, the current record for Labor Day weekend gas prices is $3.84 a gallon. That one was set in 2012. Right now, AAA says prices are just shy of that at $3.83. Again, not in California. While prices typically begin to lower as summer comes to an end, this year's extreme heat, damaging refineries, and OPEC restricting supplies have sent them upward this year. So, yeah.
There's a whole story to this, and I don't know if I should do it now, but I'll just give you the 45-second version of this, because this is absolutely what is happening with these gas prices and with oil in America. It is something that we have essentially surrendered to Middle East oil-producing nations like the Saudis. We don't need to. If we didn't export our oil, we could be completely self-sufficient. We wouldn't need a drop of oil from any country outside the U.S. But because we've made this deal with the fuel companies, these dirty energy companies, we allow them to export oil that they drilled for and got here in this country so that they can open market sell it. It sells on the open market for, huge money, right? We have to pay huge money for that oil that we buy on the open market. And so that's why the price at the pump is so high. If you made those oil companies drill here and keep anything that they drilled for here, the price of oil would be lower. And by the way, that's the way it was I'm not suggesting some revolutionary idea. I think it changed under, I want to say it changed maybe early 2000s. I mean, or in the 1990s maybe. It's fairly recent. So this idea somehow that the oil companies can sell on the open market, then we end up having to buy from the Saudis, that's just wrong. And that it drives the price of oil up, and that helps the oil companies. But because the oil companies essentially own our government, that's how we end up this place. I promised you 45 seconds. It was longer. But that is what's going on. For real. Google it. You can find it. And it's a sad state. We should make these oil companies, if they want to drill for oil in this country, whatever they get out of this country should stay in this country.
Google it.
All right. Speech over.
Next story, ban on transgender care for kids in Texas goes into effect tomorrow. Texas will become the largest state in the country to restrict things like puberty blockers and hormone therapy for children. A judge placed an injunction on the law after a lawsuit was filed on behalf of 5 Texas families and 3 doctors, but the Attorney General appealed to the state Supreme Court, which automatically paused that injunction as the case moves forward. And more than 20 states have passed laws to ban some gender-affirming care for minors. Let's go to tennis. And I know, Mark, you had mentioned a bit of this yesterday, but U.S. Open players are complaining about a strong marijuana odor enveloping a Flushing Meadows tennis court. Greek
Where
tennis
are my weed
player.
smokers at?
Apparently, they're on the outer courts mostly.
Yeah, it's bad. I guess really bad enough for them to complain about because it's open air, but it's wafting down to where the players are. This is Greek tennis player Maria Sakkari. She was the first to smell the weed wafting over court 17. She alerted a chair umpire Monday during her opening match with Spain's Rebecca Mazarova. Sakkari lost that match, but other players complained about the pot too. Now the U.S. Tennis Association and the New York Police Department are investigating because no smoking of any kind is allowed in that stadium. Employees have been questioned and game video reviewed, but so far there's no evidence of anyone toking up.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Well, apparently it's not. Apparently it's not as clear as crystal. But well, there is a no. I can see the no smoking thing. I mean, it's got to be difficult to perform at that level when you're breathing in smoke of any kind. But to think that it's secondhand pot smoke, yeah, that would be a little distracting.
Yeah, no smoking. That means you too, pot smokers. Speaking of air pollution, though, a report says California has the majority of most of the polluted counties in the United States. The Air Quality of Life Index shows that in 2021, 20 of the 30 U.S. counties with the highest levels of pollution were in California. The most polluted areas in the United States, Plumas County in Northern California. The report says the dirty air is due to the impact of wildfires. This report adds air pollution remains the greatest external threat to public health. More than tobacco use, malnutrition, and alcohol abuse or use, it is air pollution that is the big one. So, Visa is raising its rates for businesses. The San Francisco-based credit card giant and MasterCard both increasing what a business pays when a customer makes a purchase using a credit card. Financial experts expect the higher operating costs to be passed right along to you, the consumer. You're welcome. Thank you. In Berkeley, pretty serious situation. They're investigating a hate crime involving shellfish and a Jewish fraternity. Authorities say members of Alpha Epsilon Pi woke up last weekend to find dozens of shellfish had been thrown all over the frat's property, even through a window. Fraternity officials believe up to 6 people might be involved in this incident that fraternity leaders are calling an act of anti-Semitic vandalism. Fraternity members say it's not the first time something like this has happened at their home. There are some changes coming to a beloved ride at Disneyland. If you love Disney's Haunted Mansion, Well, listen up. This applies to you. Here's a beautiful picture of the Haunted Mansion. Yes. The park officials say Haunted Mansion, the Haunted Mansion, will close for a time beginning in January so that expansion work can be done on the attraction. The plan calls for an expansion of the grounds around the mansion that will be themed after Haunted Mansion characters. They'll also be putting in a new elevator to help guests with disabilities trying to get to the ride. It's not known how long the Haunted Mansion will be closed down while all of this takes place.
So it's a mansion expansion, is what you're telling me.
Mansion expansion.
And will there be a pickleball court that will be they'll play pickleball, the ghosts and spirits?
Not.
No?
It's not Disney pickleball for you.
Just
no,
a thought. I mean,
not.
maybe I should have been at the meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
Lastly, Meg Ryan kind of making a comeback is what's happening here. The first trailer is being released for her new rom-com. It's called What Happens Later. It stars Meg Ryan and David Duchovny as two old flames who bump into each other when their flights get canceled. I think you can surmise what happens after that. The two spend a night in the airport together and they relive the past. This film is directed and co-written by Meg Ryan, and it's set to hit theaters early October, but she's been kind of not making movies for a while. It's been about 8 years since she's had a movie come out, so this is being considered a comeback.
Now, she can't promote it because of SAG-AFTRA. You're not allowed to promote it. So, like, you're doing her a favor right now. This show's doing her a favor.
You're welcome, Meg. There you go. This report is sponsored by the absolutely amazing, lovely people at the Coachella Valley Coffee Company. The coffee's amazing, the tea is amazing, and they're super nice as well. You can get a special discount, a Mark Thompson Show exclusive. It's 10% off across the board. So when you go and look at the website and check out the coffee and the tea, and you get to the place where you're checking out, put in the code MARKT, all together, no spaces, for your 10% off. I'm Kim McAllister.
I know, I'm sorry to interrupt, I always do, but just quickly, we have David waiting, but I just want to mention, pick the bean that's good for you. They've got all sorts of different beans, and as I told you before, but those who are new, it's all hand roasted. I mean, this is the real thing, this place, and it's all new crop. You know, a lot of the discount beans you'll find in stores or online, that's old crop. It's discounted for a reason. They're terrific. And I love that this coffee that I've been drinking for years, I mean, they are the best coffee I've ever tasted. I'm so gratified that they're part of the show. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Again, Mark T. It's all together. No space between Mark and T to get the discount. 10% off on anything you order on the site. Tea, coffee, merch, whatever you get 10% off. Mark T. at checkout, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
My wife wants some vegetables for Cruda Day.
I was a basketball referee.
Feels great, baby.
Who's Mark Thompson?
It's unbelievably offensive.
What he's got going here is a situation.
I was fortunate. Everyone I worked with made me better at my job.
You are a cover-up artist and you are a liar.
What up, everybody? It's our Thursday show. Thursday's the former federal prosecutor. Now he works the defense side of the table. But the former federal prosecutor slides in here to decode so much of what's going on in the world of law. He's David Katz, everyone.
Hi, great to be with you.
David, thank you for taking time out of appearing on London radio and television to be here. He is, it's amazing, David. You are an international brand all of a sudden. Very much in demand. So congratulations. It's really cool.
I was on CNN the other day too, and you know, Mark Thompson, not you, is taking over. Is going to helm CNN, and you and I should really. Mark Thompson is not as common a name as David Katz, but if I could just tell you a David Katz story, and then you tell a Mark Thompson one.
All right.
But there's a famous sort of a corporate litigator in New York City, David Katz. And when Musk was fighting with Twitter, he was representing Twitter. It was in the Wall Street Journal. So my client calls me up and says, "Congratulations, you're representing Twitter. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to back off my case, does it?" And I said, don't worry. I'm going to still represent you. I'm in it to win it. It really is funny, isn't it, Mark, when people confuse you with a person with a common name? And the last thing I want to tell you about that is I had an Israeli client. And he said, I hired you, but I always have to laugh at your name. I said, what's funny? It's so common. He says, it's not that it's so common. It's the John Smith of Israel. In fact, when people go to a no-tell motel near Tel Aviv, they check in under the phony name David Katz.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I never would have thought, if you'd asked me to name 10 common names in Israel, David Katz would not be one of them. I love that. That's the name people.
We had the king. We had King David. So that's
true.
going to get a lot of people named David. And then Katz and Cohn, supposedly, when the tribes divided up the land and they took the land, they told the Katzes and the Cohns, you'll have something better than land. You can be the rabbis and the intellectuals. So we're landless, but we're smart. We Katzes and Cohns.
All right, so let me exploit some of your smarts and ask you about what's happening. The plea was entered today from Donald Trump, not guilty. This is in the Georgia case, right? With the okay. So speak to that, please. I think
it's very smart that they're not making them go to court to be arraigned. I think that the optics when they had him go to the jail with his huge caravan, I think his huge plane. And that whole optics of being taken to that old hellhole of a jail that the Democrats, he can say, have never cleaned up. And now they want to take a former Republican president and take him over there. So I think that the optics played to his advantage. And I don't think there's really any upside for Georgia forcing him to go to an arraignment, show up with his plane, his caravan again. It's just not the right look. Go and convict him at some point. That'll be the right look. Found guilty by the jury. That'll be the right look.
Yeah, right. Less theater and more law. So let me ask you about this move that really overlaps with politics. I'm glad Donald, the Maine Coon Sutphin, asked this question. Please ask David about the Georgia GOP and their attempt to remove the DA, Fani Willis. This is this new law, David.
Well, states do have authority over cities. And of course, it depends what the law is and how the law is interpreted. But it's not, it's not an amazing idea that a state could remove a local district attorney. Now, they've been elected, these local district attorneys, so it's a bit much. But it depends, again, how the law and the constitution of the particular state is set out. Obviously, there'd be a huge bunch of challenges if she were removed. People say, well, what difference would it make? I think it would make a huge difference if they actually went that far. Not just there'd be demonstrations, there'd be huge, just fury over the fact that the Republican state legislators did that to an elected, district attorney in Atlanta. So there would not only be the fury and the protests, but she'd have an assistant if it stayed with her office. If it was just a recusal and a removal of her, if they removed her whole office, they would have to send it to another office. But it wouldn't put the kibosh on the case. It would be brought by another prosecutor. And it would be like these cases with the state attorney general here, where the DA can't handle a case. And so they bring in the state attorney general in California, and they have good lawyers too. So they prosecute it in lieu of. But it would be, as I say, it's not a good thing if it starts to go down that road. And she has to be careful not to give them rope. A lot of this is sort of the taunting and the smack. And then the idea is to get the other side, to get the prosecutors and law enforcement to overreact, right? And then once they overreact, you could say, you see, this is all a witch hunt. This terrible person that's trying to get me. So a lot of it is to taunt them and, knock them off their stride. And that's why I think she has to be, very careful. And I don't mean any criticism of her personally. I think that she's doing a good job in terms of how she hung in there in this investigation. She brought the people in there. But when she says things like, her press conference that night when they finally brought the indictment, remember they took it from one person to another person.
Yeah.
In the courtroom, no one knew who had been indicted or what they'd been indicted for. And we sat around for 2 hours. I was on the radio then. That's a fun thing. You've probably done that too, Mark, where you're just on the radio and people are so interested in something, they just want you to speculate. And so we did that. And then she came out, and then the press conference, Mark, was very interesting because she said, this is my recollection of it. And I know you had Jim on, and Jim Avila, I think, had a little bit different recollection of it. But I was pretty clear on it that she said this is a 5-year mandatory minimum offense, and it cannot be probated. In other words, a judge cannot give probation, even if a judge feels that probation is the appropriate sentence, because it has a 5-year mandatory minimum. And I think the truth of it was, well, that particular statute has a 5-year mandatory minimum. Another statute also comes into play, and that one allows a so-called mandatory minimum sentence to be probated. So to that extent, her statement was misleading. And if you think, why would it have been misleading? It was to scare people, some of the other 19, that, oh my God, I'm going to jail for 5 years. They hear that. And, the wife says to him, honey, you could be going to jail for 5 years. Get on the phone right now and see what they want you to do in terms of cooperation. So I do think that she was a little bit stampeding people. And I think that she was saying things inaccurately. And that kind of thing she really has to watch. And I think some of her other statements, she just has to be really careful. Like the 19 people, she says she's going to try all 19 people together. That's not serious. And that gives fodder to the Republicans in the state legislature to say that she's not taking serious positions. She's grandstanding. She's not going to try 19 people.
But isn't that, to be fair to, and I'm not trying to make the argument for her, but just to press the point, isn't that just the posturing that you might associate with a prosecutor? I mean, is there any, I get it that you're saying from a practical standpoint, you can't do that, but isn't that, you've just sort of suggested that that's prosecutorial strategy almost.
Well, in the United Kingdom, they managed to actually bring these prosecutions without putting them in the newspaper. It sounds unbelievable. A civilized country does that. We're used to the perp walks, right? We're used to the prosecutors are fighting crime, starting with you, the guy who's presumed innocent that just got charged in perp walk today. So yes, but I think that she has to really cool it because this case is at a high profile level that I think, really never seen before. I mean, you could try to think of some cases. John Edwards. This was Trump. Trump's been the president. This is much bigger than John Edwards.
Yeah, of course.
It's much bigger than, really, for what it matters, it's more, OJ was on TV and it captured the country's attention, riveted the country's attention. But my God, this is the former president of the United States. So she's on a whole different level of high profile. And she does have this Republican legislature that's looking for her to make a mistake.
BP is asking, David Katz, how does sentencing of the Proud Boys, the guy today who got 17 years, and he'll be the first, and there are going to be other sentencing. I believe there may be sentencing either tomorrow or early next week to the others. I think there are 4 others. How does it affect sentencing the boss, Donald Trump, is what they say?
Well, judges can have different views of this case, but if you look at this as an insurrection, a coup, something out of like a banana republic that they were going to destroy our democracy, and 5 people died, which was predictable when you maraud and take over a place, you could say that these 17 and 18-year sentences really are too light. And I think the government asked for 30, 32 years. Now, just as a criminal defense attorney now, I shudder to see someone get a 30-year sentence. I just think, the person can change in custody, right? They can rehabilitate themselves. We kind of believe in that. In terms of them flipping, if the idea is even getting 17 or 18 years would get them to flip, the question is how much they really know. This seemed to be kind of like a parallelism. And yes, Trump sent out the tweet that said, come to D.C., it will be wild. But he doesn't send a lot of emails. I don't think they're really going to have a whole lot of contact between him and the Proud Boys, where he said, make it look like, you're just going to have a demonstration and do a fake out and then go in there through the barricades and try to hang Pence until he does our bidding. That's not Trump. You're not going to find Trump saying something like that. You're certainly not going to find him emailing something. So maybe these Proud Boys can help get Roger Stone.
Right, that would be who it would be. It would be Trump surrogates that they would like to get.
So they would help get Roger Stone. Then Roger Stone would flip, and he would say that there's the famous Willard Hotel. Remember, all of these conspirators met at the Willard Hotel, which is a famous place in Washington D.C. I'm sure you know it well. And it's way back in history, right? The Lincoln. It was during the time of Lincoln, and they were conspiring to do things at the Willard Hotel back in the 1860s. Well, they were the night before January 6th. So people all want to know what that was about, and if one of the Proud Boys was there. My feeling is that if they really knew something, they would be talking. I don't see them. You see some of these organizations, Mark, where there's such ideology that people are really willing to jihad. I think some of them are just willing to spend the rest of their life in jail or in Guantanamo. But I don't think that's the situation with these fellows here. I think if they knew something that would get them half of the sentence, get their sentence cut in half, I think they would tell. And I don't think they know much of that, except maybe about each other and about Roger Stone, maybe.
I want to ask you about Rudy Giuliani, because I think there's you can help me, a misconception. The judge has said that there's enough there in his defamatory remarks, and they're awful what he's done. And he's haunted these poor poll workers. I think it's so grotesque that words don't even describe how horrible it is to turn their lives upside down. I think that literally is a quote from her. She said that, I think, in testimony to the committee, the J6 committee. But anyway, my point is, so there's been in the last 24 hours, a move because Giuliani's judge in that case said, yeah, there's enough here to proceed. That doesn't mean that he's been found guilty of it. It just means that the judge says, yeah, this is okay. I see these remarks as set us straight on what the judge's decision and declaration actually means.
He's been found to be liable, which is civilly responsible. And now the only issue left in the case, two things. Number one, to have a trial on damages. And they're going to ask for millions of dollars, first of all, because of the harm. And I think some of them are going to be punitive damages because, as you say, these women were hounded. They couldn't even go out. And it was just so extraordinary because Giuliani didn't seem to have any evidence on them at all. He just went into this riff, and it was like he hypnotized himself. And it just got more and more, they were handing around these packages like they were heroin or cocaine, these vials. And all they were doing, I think, was like picking up something up from the floor or moving one bag that was on the floor from one spot on the floor to another spot. And then they zoomed in on the cameras, and you could see there was no there to Giuliani's accusations. So what happened was that he had to provide some documents that showed how much money he had, those kind of documents, and some emails. Just a real quick version. He was searched, if you remember that, and they seized a lot of stuff. He says everything that is relevant, the FBI has it. You want to go get discovery in this case about me, go to the FBI, and the FBI has it. The judge says, no, I don't think so. I think you still have some things, and you haven't turned them over. You have to turn them over. She made a finding that he had them, and he didn't turn them over. And the sanction for that, the punishment for that, was that the other side gets to win because you're not cooperating with discovery. You're giving the other side that kind of a hard time. So he got sanctions for making them do extra work, and he got precluded from defending the case on the merits because he had so failed to cooperate with the discovery there with the two ladies who are suing him. Now, he says that everything he said about them is free speech and some other issue. He's preserved those two issues so he can appeal and say the judge got it all wrong by saying that I was liable because I had a free speech right to say those things. But as we know, this free speech is so overblown with these people, Mark, because just about every crime you can think of has some speech element to it. When you extort somebody, you speak to them, right? When you commit a fraud, you convince somebody to invest in something which is worthless. When you terrorize these people like these two women, you say things. And if you know that they're not true, you're certainly civilly liable. Forget criminal. That's just what defamation is. You say stuff that you know is false, or you are indifferent to the fact that it's false. And people get hit for that every single day. Think of Fox News, got hit for $700 million civilly for saying things that were defamatory about a company.
Will Giuliani ever? So I think I understand then what you're saying. So now this moves to the phase of damages, as you say. Will Giuliani ever part with a dime on this, or can he appeal it into ad infinitum and have bankruptcies and all the rest and kind of do an O.J. Simpson thing?
Well, he's got a $3.5 million apartment that he's put up for sale, and I think he's pretty much made up his mind that $3.5 million apartment, the sale proceeds are gone. That he's going to have to make a deal with them and pay them, and maybe pay some other people. You know, whether he's got stuff in trust, whether he has it hidden. If you want to be suspicious, he seems to be always going to these countries that have like funky money laundering, things going on, and so you worry if you're the person like the attorney for these two ladies, and you're trying to collect, let's say, a $10 million judgment, you're obviously suspicious that he's put stuff in other people's names or he's put it offshore. But, Giuliani is really having his days of reckoning. I mean, and he's also charged, of course, he's sort of the number 2 defendant. Maybe Mark Meadows is the number 2 defendant down there in Georgia. And, they mean to put him in jail down there.
The last thing on Giuliani, just to make a note for our listeners and viewers, he has started this Rudy Giuliani Defense Fund, and his son is kind of leading it. But apparently the huge money, one billionaire, quoted in this Leon Cooperman, said he has no plans to assist Rudy Giuliani. Another billionaire, Ken Langone, also said he doesn't plan to donate to a Giuliani Legal Defense Fund, says, I wouldn't give him a nickel. So he's really, as you say, he's found his day of reckoning. But boy, he did a lot of damage before this day. I've got, Giuliani is someone who deserves no mercy.
Well, he just seems to have gotten so ambitious, overly ambitious. This is like those morality tales where someone's destroyed by their ambition and they're blinded and they just do a lot of things that you'd think that he would have had friends or advisors who would have told him this is way beyond the pale. And it just seemed that he got seduced by the whole thing. It's very funny, to me, I find Trump repellent. I see no charm there. He seems to me like a person who has no real humor. He's just cutting and snarky and just, kind of like a vile person. If I just had a chance to meet him, I'd figure he's a total phony and I would probably try not to meet him. Having said that, there must be some charm that he turns on that gets these people like Giuliani. And of course they're ambitious. It's not just the charm.
Yeah, it's power, right. Yeah, they're close to power.
They were trying to get this business from Qatar or something like that. Qatar writes a check for $5 million. And, Giuliani doesn't have people. Giuliani didn't go the way that a lot of people in his situation did. Go to a huge law firm and, start making $5 million a year, year in and year out. Giuliani that didn't seem to be Giuliani's thing. He seemed to like this. Well, he was very ambitious. He wanted to be, I think, a top official in the Trump administration.
Yeah, he wanted to be attorney general, probably. I mean, that's what a lot of people said.
And
he was drunk on attention, being relevant, I thought, a little bit, David, didn't you?
Yeah, and here's the funny thing. I had actually met Rudy Giuliani in his office on the east side of Manhattan just before he ran for mayor and won the mayoralty of New York. And, I was a former Reagan-Bush assistant U.S. attorney. He was, of course, high up, but both of us were in private practice at that point in our careers because he left the U.S. attorney position and he was working at a law firm. And I had this controversial client. He'd been in a lot of trouble. He was sort of, if you wanted to be pejorative, they called him a snake oil salesman. But he was a snake oil salesman. He had a male pattern baldness cure, and he was always in trouble with the Federal Trade Commission. He was in trouble with the post office for, and those were the days where, you would send out a flyer and then you would get, checks back in the mail. And I thought Rudy Giuliani would be the perfect person, in the Bush administration to, approach the Federal Trade Commission. So I met with him and I talked to him for about half an hour, 35 minutes, and he wasn't interested in doing it because he was going to, I took away that he was going to run for mayor and he didn't want a once convicted snake oil salesman who was now back in business. And, his whole thing was that it was for alopecia. It wasn't for male pattern baldness. And he was marketing it for alopecia and all this kind of stuff. But he was sending it to all the people who liked male pattern baldness. So he was cruising for a bruising with the Federal Trade Commission. And I thought Rudy Giuliani was the guy for the job. So I met him. And of course, then he won the mayoralty. And, then he had the broken windows thing. And then 9/11, he became America's mayor and all that kind of stuff. And then he had this disastrous presidential campaign, if people will remember. He kind of waited too long. He thought Florida was going to be his salvation. He went down to Florida, Mark, and it was a disaster when he finished third or fourth in the voting in Florida, and it was over.
Yeah, his participation in the Trump administration, just to put a button on it, I think was alongside a lot of people who came into that administration wanting to be relevant and part of the conversation and on camera a lot, frankly, in the media a lot, in the news cycle a lot. I can think of Larry Kudlow as one of those people. I mean, what the hell was Larry Kudlow doing there? I think he literally just wanted to be relevant. I mean, I know a lot of people around that world of Larry Kudlow's, and they sort of confirm that, So when you want to be in the conversation and you want to be close to power, I think you make a lot of, stupid decisions, and that's clearly what he's done. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi, David Katz. I wanted to ask about something that someone in the chat mentioned, and then I saw that there was a press conference just about an hour or so ago where Georgia Governor Brian Kemp talked about the efforts to remove the district attorney prosecuting former President Trump. And here's what he said. He said the special legislative session to impeach Fulton County DA Fani Willis would likely be ruled unconstitutional. He said, as long as he's governor, Georgia will follow the law and the Constitution regardless of who it helps or harms politically. Are these attempts to get rid of her or to punish her for bringing this case unconstitutional?
We addressed the issue at the beginning, but this is a new twist on it, the unconstitutional part. Go ahead, David.
In Florida, DeSantis removed 2 local elected district attorneys because he said they weren't doing their job. I think they made a press statement that they weren't going to go after women for getting an abortion, even if they weren't going to prosecute them, right? And he said, well, that's a statement DeSantis did, that you're not going to follow the law, and he removed them. And that's been litigated. So I don't know the particular law in Georgia, if it's like the law in Florida, but I had the impression that at least some courts seem to think that in Florida, under Florida's law, DeSantis had the right to do that. So I'm just not sure whether you can remove a local district attorney. I don't think that you could do that in California. I don't think I've seen sort of anything like that. You're an elected person. You're an elected official. If they don't like what you're doing, beat you in the next election. But you know,
they passed the law, David, as I said, maybe in earlier in our conversation. The Georgia legislature passed it, and Kemp signed it. I mean, this is on the books. It's to guard against they say prosecutorial overreach.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's such a joke because so many of these prosecutors' offices, these state prosecutors' offices, do overreach. You know, some of them have special units that are funded by the insurance industry, and they have, you know, more perks than the other district attorneys, and they have these fancy offices that the insurance industry built, and they bring all these cases against doctors and lawyers. That's a lot of the cases, the people that I represent. And a lot of these cases really are weak. I mean, it's not just special pleading because I'm defending them. So many prosecuting offices have so many gaps in the way they do things. And but so the idea that they're going to remove people, right? They're going to remove people for this. Meanwhile, there are these offices that, you know, like I said, they do things that are much more questionable. I just wanted, if I could mention just for a minute, because I'm very interested in the Mark Meadows case and what I think is going to happen with Meadows. I guess they're litigating that today. And I've disagreed with a lot of the commentators that I've seen who seem to think that he has, the 2 things they seem to get wrong. First, they seem to think that he has little chance to have the federal courts take it. I think he has a good chance of the federal courts taking it. And I think that if this district judge who's appointed by President Obama doesn't rule in his favor, I think that they're going to take it to the higher court. Now, some people have said, well, normally you can't appeal right away. You have to wait till the end of the case and appeal everything. But I think you have a right not to run the gauntlet in state court if you should win this case. I don't think that's something you have to run the gauntlet in state court, go through all of that. And then at the very end of that, some federal court will finally decide, oh, you shouldn't have been.
Yeah, you should have been.
But you shouldn't have been. You shouldn't have had to be in state court after all. Right. Even if you can't appeal it, there's something called a writ of mandate, also called mandamus, Latin for we order, and you can go from the trial court to the appellate court with this writ of mandate. And I looked at that, and I think that this might be an appropriate case to issue a writ of mandate. And remember where they're going from this Atlanta district judge appointed by Obama. They're going to a very Trumpy, very conservative court of appeals. It's actually the same court of appeals that had Cannon's case. Remember, people said with loose Cannon down there in Fort Pierce, the Trump-friendly judge, they said, my goodness, you know, if even the 11th Circuit, the idea was this conservative 11th Circuit reversed her. Oh, my goodness, she must have been way out there, way too pro-Trump. Well, that's the 11th Circuit that this case would go to. And then from there, it would go to the Supreme Court. There's no reason why it couldn't be taken by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court wouldn't have to take it. And again, there are 5 votes on there. The other thing that I don't agree with about the analysis is people act like, well, once Meadows got to federal court, then all of his problems are over. They're not. It doesn't mean that he's exonerated. You know, he's going to immediately move to dismiss the case. It's like an FBI agent. The FBI agent shouldn't be tried in state court. The FBI agent should remove the case, has a right to remove the case to federal court because he's a federal official doing what he was doing as an FBI agent. But if he used excessive force, he's going to be convicted in the state court, and he's going to be convicted for doing things that he shouldn't have done that were illegal. If Meadows did something that was illegal, even though he's got the argument he did it in the course and scope of his employment, if he went down there to Florida and monkeyed around with things, and they have witnesses who say, you know, that he wanted the officials to do this or to do that, he would have the case in federal court. But guess what? He'd be convicted at the end of the day if he did things that were criminal beyond a reasonable doubt, and that could be proved. And likewise with I don't know if Sidney Powell.
Sidney Powell, yeah, right.
Jeffrey Clark wants to send the case to federal court. The others want to get a severance.
A speedy trial. Yeah,
a speedy trial. The others will get a severance. Again, they're not going to try 19 people together. I said at the beginning that I thought Phony Willis ought to charge some of the lower down people and turn them. The fact that she's charged all 19 and along with them Trump, I do think that she is taking the risk, Mark, that she's playing into Trump's hands, including in some other areas. You know, when he goes to that judge in Washington, D.C. and says, I am so busy, not just running for president if he's the nominee or running to be the nominee, but I'm also so busy because let me count them. I got this case down in Georgia where all of these people that are near and dear to me are in trouble, and I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to figure out a strategy down there. They're trying to get the case moved to federal court, which I have to think about in the next 30 days, Trump, whether I want my case moved to federal court. I got this New York case that's bearing down on me. I got this case down in the Southern District regarding the national security documents. And you could say, look, he made all of those problems for himself. He got himself, righteously charged in 4 different criminal cases. But boy, it just seems to me that, she may be playing into his hands. And I guess what I thought what made more sense, and you and I talked about this before she did it. So this is not just Monday morning quarterback. We did some pretty good quarterbacking while the play was going on. And while the play was going on, Mark, we said that maybe it would make sense to charge some of these people, the ones with the 2 ladies, charge them for the thing with the 2 ladies, charge Giuliani in that one, charge Giuliani in that one. And then later on, this is a fantastic thing, the busy calendar.
Yeah, look at that. That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Again, it's his own, like the E. Jean Carroll. A lot of this is of his own making. But if you step back from this and you say, well, wait a second, he is kind of busy to be going to some of these trials. And so I think it's possible that his case, Mark, that his case down there in Georgia will end up, that his case in Washington, D.C., Mark, may end up with the U.S. Supreme Court saying, you know what? We determine the public interest. I mean, the whole argument that's been given for a March date in the case that might actually get to trial is that there's a huge public interest in the public knowing, is Trump guilty or not guilty? And, this U.S. Supreme Court may say, well, we're just as able to find the public interest as that district judge was in Washington, D.C. And we, the 5, the 5 or 6 on the Supreme Court, might say, no, the public interest is in giving him a fair amount of time to prepare for the trial. And it's more important that he have time and that people see that he has time to prepare than it is that we, quote, know whether he's guilty or not. And if they say that and they set the trial, this U.S. Supreme Court sets the trial for, let's say, December. They say, okay, have the election, have it in December. What real difference does it make, except people really, really want to see him found guilty before the election? The U.S. Supreme Court may say, that's not so much, that doesn't tilt it in the public interest. And I think it's possible that Trump is going to go up to the appellate courts. He's just got to figure out, Mark, this is the last thing I want to say, whether he does it now. I don't think he will. I think the smart thing would be to do everything that he can to prepare. Say, look, we have put 4 lawyers on this. We went through these documents, hundreds of thousands of pages at a time. And here we are, let's say in January. And we're only half done. We can't get to trial in March. And then she's going to say, no, I told you the March date. The March date holds. It's very important to have people know before the election whether Trump is guilty or not guilty. And from that ruling, right, in January, February, that's the one they try to take to the U.S. Supreme Court for Trump.
Wow. It's a lot. It's a lot. And there's more. There's even more. And Luis says with a super chat, keep theme relevant. This fall, Dancing with the Cons. Trump edition featuring Eastman, Powell, Navarro, and a special cha-cha-cha with Rudy Giuliani. Yeah, we haven't even gotten to Navarro. We can talk about that next time. I do want to talk about the increasing weight and certainly the media that the New York case is taking. As she's essentially saying we don't even need a trial. This guy's inflated his net worth by billions of dollars. But in any case, for the next visit. So appreciate it. Yeah,
Mark, his deposition is priceless. You have to have some fun with that on one of your shows. The Trump deposition, which is like, well, these financial statements, like I just sort of put some numbers down there and people knew that it was all sort of, I don't know. I just sort of felt, I put down that I was worth $2 billion, not because I was worth $2 billion. I wanted the banks to be impressed. I liked listing that stuff. It's so much fun to say I had a $300 million apartment, even though I didn't. But it was fun. It was fun. The banks were relying on it. No.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
Oh, gosh.
So unbelievable. Oh, and his friends think he's honest. And he said in their position. And he saved us from a nuclear holocaust.
No, he said that.
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
Yeah, all right. David, love you. Thank you for your time, sir. David Katz, everybody.
I love you guys. Take care.
All right. A lot of fun. Wow.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There's a lot there. I know there are outstanding questions and issues. Can't get to all of them always, but a lot there. Truly remarkable. Maybe we'll do a live reading of some of the deposition, the Trump deposition, at another date.
Like a fireside read with a nice cup of tea by the fireplace and Mark Thompson reading the deposition.
Oh, I like that. We're talking. We're writing. I like it. Yeah, we're putting it together.
Yeah.
That'll work. Get Katz with you so he can get his legal analysis. He just go page by page through the actual stuff.
Oh my God, that would take forever. That would be fun.
That'd be a good stream.
It would be good.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I think it would be a good stream. Good point. Kim, we've had one of these days where we've kind of we've had various people break in at various times, and I think it's been a good show.
Yeah, I think it's been great.
And we kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is roll some of what we were going to do today into tomorrow's show.
Mm-hmm.
I did get the pickleball court story in, which I was very happy with. Thank you. Yeah.
I have a couple stories. Do we have time for a couple stories? Just two?
I think we do, and that's what I was getting at. First of all, smash the like button.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Costs you nothing to smash the like button. Thank you for that. The thumbs up. We'll do a little news from Kim.
Yeah.
And then maybe squeeze in another story, and we'll go through some comments. I've seen some comments along the way, and I'd like to respond to some if I can as well. So there's still some business to do, and we will do it. Mark Thompson Show.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Use Mark Thompson.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and wanted to do this story because David Katz was just talking about this. Former President Trump is requesting his Georgia election case be separated from his co-defendants who are seeking a speedy trial. The request comes after the former president pleaded not guilty to 13 criminal counts for his alleged efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss in the state. Trump's attorneys argue they will not have enough time to prepare if his trial begins on October 23rd, and that is the date set for co-defendant Kenneth Chesborough. So they don't want to go that early, so they're saying, yeah, you know what, we don't want to be associated with you guys at all. That's it. Another story I was looking at is President Biden is proposing new regulations that would eliminate the so-called gun show loophole. This rule, proposed by the ATF, would require anyone selling firearms in stores, gun shows, or over the internet to conduct criminal background checks on buyers. So the new rule, set to go through the federal rulemaking process. Administration officials say the move is the result of a law passed by Congress last year after the deadly school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. So I thought that was pretty important. I wanted to also let you know that U.S. mortgage rates are cooling off a little bit right now. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage average still over 7%, but it ticked down to 7.18 after 5 weeks of increases. That according to data from Freddie Mac. The home loan company's chief economist said the recent volatility makes it difficult to forecast where the rates will go next, but they should have a better idea in September when the Federal Reserve announces the next step for interest rate hikes. So maybe we'll see things go down a little bit. Okay, let's hope so. Last story, a California history teacher is going viral on TikTok after turning her classroom lessons into more relatable 1-minute videos. Her name is Lauren Chella. She teaches at McFarland High in Bakersfield. She took to TikTok to inspire her students and make history fun, debuting her first lesson during the pandemic, and she continues to create content on TikTok that stretches across time, including from the French Revolution and the World Wars, the atomic bomb, and Cleopatra. She calls the clips Gen Z Teaches History.
That's cool.
There you go. I gotta pull these kids in somehow, right?
Yeah, you gotta it's all about communicating. Am I right, Kim?
You meet them where they are, which is sadly on TikTok. Oh, this show is crowdfunded, which means we rely on you. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com, where you'll find many links, including ones to the Patreon and PayPal pages. Our thanks to you. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Yeah, I know it. I'm feeling good. I hope you are too. We've covered a lot of territory today. It's been a pretty thorough drill down on many things. I wanted to see if anybody had anything in the chat that I needed to attend to. Kim tends to, we like avoid. I have no problem with criticism. You know that, Kim? I have no problem with taking on people, but today it hasn't been too heavy, huh? Not too much static?
It's been a day in the chat. It's really
it has. It's not been a quiet day.
There were a couple people that ended up blocked.
Oh, you're kidding me. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I told you not to block people so much.
Well, I'm sorry, but
Why are you yelling?
I just don't mind criticism. I don't mind rancor. I don't mind it.
Why are you yelling?
This is what's more crazy than criticism, I have to say. So I put somebody in timeout because I know I was supposed to go easy on the blockage. I think maybe was it Tony that blocked? I don't know. Maybe
Tony, did you block someone?
No, it must have been me. I must have done it.
Kim, you're the only blocker here, and you have enough blocking momentum to cover all of us. You love the blocking.
Kim, how are
you?
you?
There was some guy typing in all caps with religious weirdness, and he got blocked.
Oh, I see. Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
All caps too
Thank
far.
you.
Tony's got a thing against all caps. I don't have anything against religious weirdness. I've got nothing against religion or whatever. I don't know. But I do surrender the chat sort of to Kim. So if you get blocked, it's Kim, because I wouldn't block. Virtually, there was only one guy I thought in the history of the show that I saw anyway. To be fair, Kim sees a lot more. She really goes through it. Who I felt, he was just so rude that I could, when it gets a name calling or whatever, I can see getting rid of somebody like that. But I don't mind criticism at all. Some people are so blockable, says Karen.
You just don't get it.
I don't get it. You're right. I don't get it. Oh, Mark, these folks needed to be blocked, says Delette. Wow, Delette agrees with you.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not just willy-nilly blocking. I'm trying to keep this a lovely place for the people that we value that are part of the show community. And so I don't want the, come on.
Who is having that conversation?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Kim blocked a guy that thought he was God. Yeah. So he could unblock himself if he really was God, I think.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, John Watson.
Well, listen, anybody who does think they're God, you're welcome on this show. I'm always looking to suck up to God. I have no problem sucking up to the Lord. Tom Gunn, good day, sir. Yes, it was a good day, sir moment. Right. Sayonara, sucker kind of moment.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah. Mark, it's not legit criticism, says Vicky in Sausalito. It's trolling, and it hampers our discussion. Wow. Well, I don't know.
Why are you yelling?
I've blocked people before, and they've sent emails apologizing for their behavior and saying they repent, and I let them back in. So
they repent.
If as long as you understand that what you've done here is not furthering the discussion or being kind, if you do want to apologize to the Mark Thompson Show community,
and you want to repent,
I will unblock you.
The Church of Kim, you want to repent? Okay.
You cannot say you love your country.
I am just saying that Kim's a tough taskmaster.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, very, very tough. Well, it sounds like very exciting. I'm sorry I missed it.
Jada had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, well, no one's accusing Jada. But it's nice that everybody was in on it. I really did. I kind of like that stuff. I'll have to go back and see if I can find any of it. But you've blocked it, so it's already gone.
It's gone.
From the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, they're gone. Yeah. They've been disappeared.
I wanted to recognize a couple of people who did help us out today because we are crowdfunded. So I always appreciate everybody who tosses in on our virtual tip jar, or whatever you want to call it. You know, the super stickers and super chats. And even in replay, there's a little heart with a $sign. If you want to toss something in there, you just click on it and you can contribute whatever. Mm-hmm. But I saw a couple, Tony. I saw, of course, Pinky, $1 a day, Pinky. Yeah, exactly. $1 a day, Pinky. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Mm-hmm. And appreciate that super sticker, Pink. And Tom Gunn for $5. What up, Tom?
Big shout out.
Nice.
My favorite kind of gun is Tom Gunn. Maria Curiel Ponce for $10, super sticker.
Big shout out.
Big shootout. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Big shout out, I should say. Wes, I want to thank you from the bottom of my fake British heart.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Deborah B, big shout out.
Big shout out.
You guys. Vivian with the 10. I think I thanked her already.
Big shout out.
Yes. Pamela with the 5.
Big shout out.
I do just want to say to everybody, you move me to the very limits of emotion.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
But the limits of my emotion. Now, we started with the Proud Boys. We moved on to Clarence Thomas. We moved on to Donald Trump and got a really great summary of the situation with both the legal calendar and the situation in Georgia and the federal case with Jack Smith. We talked Mark Meadows. All of that's available to you if you missed any of it. But there was one huge thing that I'm really surprised on this show no one mentioned. It's related to something that was mentioned on the show. Something in this next story, it's our big closing stick the landing story, was mentioned on the show, but this story wasn't mentioned. And it's big. What could it possibly have been? Anyone? If you guessed marijuana, you can give yourself give yourself points. The Biden administration's Department of Health and Human Services, this just happened, is recommending that the Drug Enforcement Administration significantly loosen federal restrictions on marijuana. They stopped short of advising that it should be entirely removed from the Controlled Substances Act, but they want it removed, the Biden administration does, from Schedule 1 to making it Schedule 3. That is the biggest change in federal drug policy potentially in decades. The HHS Assistant Secretary of Health, so Health and Human Services is what HHS stands for, and she's the Secretary of Health, Assistant Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine. She wrote in this letter to the DEA that the recommendation was based on review conducted by the FDA, and the DEA is confirming that it received the letter. Now, here's what happens. There's an official review process. That process has already been initiated by the executive branch, right, by the president and by the president's people. The FDA conducts the review, which is then sent to the National Institute on Drug Abuse and HHS. After that, HHS transmits a letter of recommendation to the DEA, and then the DEA rules.
What?
All right, let me repeat it. No, I'm kidding. The DEA is not required to follow the recommendation, which is weird to me, you know? I mean, why, after all that study and all of those filters, is the DEA not required to follow it? The administration process is an independent process led by HHS. This is a quote. The White House press secretary issued this statement. It's guided by evidence. We're just not going to comment on that right now. Cannabis is currently a Schedule 1 substance, which means it is deemed to have a high likelihood of abuse and no medical uses. Heroin and LSD are also Schedule 1 drugs. Schedule 3 drugs are categorized as having moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. The category includes ketamine and testosterone. So This HHS recommendation is likely the result of a year-long federal review of all available marijuana research. So I think that is consistent with stories that we follow for all of you potheads.
Where are my weed smokers at?
But to be fair, I say that jokingly. A lot of people have been helped by pot. There's no question. I think it helps with pain and some situations that involve treatments of other sort where it can be a palliative of, in many situations. And so I really think it is too long in coming. Palliative is a ding word. And I do also think that this is a promise that was made by this administration, and they are making good on it. Yet another promise made by administration that is making good on some of them. So we'll see. I hope it happens. And the last thing I'll say is, hey, if you want to get high and that's your thing, you should be able to. And it doesn't always have to be a medical reason. I mean, but for them to, for so long, suggest that there was no medical connection, I think that's just sort of patently absurd. But pot helped with 4 years of number 45. Well put. Weed helps me tolerate other people, says Hughes in Japan. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Clearly someone who's in our chat. David says, I'm an investor in cannabis, hoping for high returns. High returns, you mean? I get it. Very good. All right. Good stuff. Tony, I'm going to adjourn unless you have some other reason that I should not adjourn.
We're good. Wrap it up.
Right, okay.
Thanks, Tony.
There's another show starting in a little bit. Someone else's.
Well, it pains me to leave. I do have other things to chat about. Fortunately, I have another show tomorrow. And then tomorrow, we welcome in Jim Avila, Michael Shore on politics. We welcome in Albert's Curated Florida. And, of course, Michael Snyder, the Culture Blaster, on what to watch this weekend. So I love that we've shared today. I feel that there's been a sense of sharing. And we've also, well, we've learned a lot about ourselves. Thank you, Kim. And
Kim, how are you?
If I were you, I'd head over to the after party live.
Yeah.
And Tony, thank you. I love an after party, and all my after parties are live.
We'll do it live. I'll write it, and
we'll do it live.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
They have their own channel, the After Party Live. Find it. Go there now.
All the time. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do it live.
Till tomorrow.
We'll do it live.
Bye-bye.